Okay, the actual ordeals of the Exalbaean mysteries were 7 in number. As a preliminary, the two adventurers crossed a river of mud and then a stream of blood, accomplishing these difficult feats by using their sabarakans as bridges. Continuing on their way, they reached a point where 4 roads converged: a black road, a white road, a red road, and a green road. Now, Hunapu and Xbalanque knew that their first test would consist of being able to discriminate between the Princess Balba and the wooden effigies robbed to resemble them. Also, they must call each of the princes by his correct name without having been given the information. To secure this information, Hunapu pulled a hair from his leg, which hair then became a strange insect called Zan, buzzing along the black road. Then Zan entered the council chamber of the Princess of Exalba and stung the leg of the figure nearest the door, which it discovered to be a mannequin. By the same artifice, the second figure was proved to be of wood, but upon stinging the third, there was an immediate response by stinging each of the 12 assembled princes. In turn, the insect thus discovered each one's name, for the princes called each other by name in discussing the cause of the mysterious bites. Having secured the desired information in the novel manner, the insect then flew back to Hunapu and Xbalanque, who, thus fortified, fearlessly approached the threshold of Ex Balba and presented themselves to the 12 assembled princes. When told to adore the king, Hunapu and Xbalanque laughed, for they knew that the figure pointed out to them was the lifeless mannequin. The young adventurers thereupon addressed the 12 princes by name, thus: Hail, what's his name? Huncam. Hail, Vukub came. Hail, Quirapat. Hail, Chuchamanuk. Hail, Ahalapu. Hail, Ahalakana. Hail, Chamabak. Hail, Chamabaholam. Hail, Quitzkik. Hail, Patan. Hail, Quiri. Hail, Quirixkak. When invited by the ex-Balbans to seat themselves upon a great stone bench, Hunapu and Xbalanque declined to do so, declaring that they well knew the stone to be heated so that they would be burned to death if they sat upon it. The princes of Ex Balba then ordered Hunapu and Xbalanque to rest for the night in the House of Shadows. This completed the first degree of the Exbalbian mysteries. The second trial was given in the House of Shadows, where to each of the candidates was brought a pine torch and a cigar, with the injunction that both must be kept alight throughout the entire night, yet each must be returned the next morning unconsumed. Knowing that death was the alternative to failure in the test, the young men burnt arras feathers in place of the pine splinters, which they closely resemble, and also put fireflies on the tips of the cigars. Seeing the lights, those who watched felt certain that Hunapu and Xbalanque had fallen into the trap, but when morning came, the torches and cigars were returned to the guards, unconsumed and still burning. In amazement and awe, the princes of Ex Balba gazed upon the unconsumed splinters and cigars, for never before had these been returned intact. The third ordeal took place presumably in a cavern called the House of Spears. Here, hour after hour, the youths were forced to defend themselves against the strongest and most skillful warriors armed with spears. Hunapu and Xbalanque pacified the spearmen, who thereupon ceased attacking them. They then turned their attention to the second most difficult part of the test, the production of 4 vases of the rarest flowers, but which they were not permitted to leave the temple to gather. Unable to pass the guards, the 2 young men secured the assistance of the ants. These tiny creatures, crawling into the gardens of the temple, brought back the blossoms, so that by morning the vases were filled. When Hunapu and Xbalanque presented the flowers to the 12 princes, the latter, in amazement, recognized the blossoms as having been filched from their own private gardens. In consternation, the princes of Ex Balba then consoled themselves how they could destroy the intrepid neophytes, and forthwith prepared for them the next ordeal. For their fourth test, the 2 brothers were made to enter the House of Cold. where they remained for an entire night. The princes of Xbalba considered the chill of the icy cavern to be unbearable, and it is described as the abode of the frozen winds of the north. Hunapu and Xbalanque, however, protected themselves from the deadening influence of the frozen air by building fires of pine cones whose warmth caused the spirit of cold to leave the cavern, so that the youths were not dead, but full of life when the day dawned. Even greater than before was the amazement of the princes of Xbalba, and Hunapu and Xbalanque again entered the hall of assembly in the custody of their guardians. The fifth ordeal was also of a nocturnal nature. Hunapu and Xbalanque were ushered into a great chamber, which was immediately filled with ferocious tigers. Here they were forced to remain throughout the night. The young men tossed bones to the tigers, which they ground into pieces with their strong jaws. Gazing into the house of the tigers, the princes of Xbalba beheld the animals chewing the bones and said to one another, "They have at last learned to know the power of Xbalba, and they have given themselves up to the beasts." But when at dawn, Hunapu and Xbalanque emerged from the house of the tigers unharmed, the Xbalbans cried, "Of what race are those?" For they could not understand how man could escape the tiger's fury. Then the princes of Xbalba prepared for the two brothers a new ordeal. The sixth test consisted of remaining from sunset to sunrise in the house of fire. Hunapu and Xbalanque entered a large apartment arranged like a furnace. On every side the flames arose and the air was stifling. So great was the heat that those who entered this chamber could survive only a few moments. But at sunrise, when the doors of the furnace were opened, Hunapu and Xbalanque came forth unscorched by the fury of the flames. The princes of Xbalba, perceiving how the two intrepid youths had survived every ordeal, prepared for their destruction, were filled with fear lest all the secrets of Xbalba should fall into the hands of Hunapu and Xbalanque. So they prepared the last ordeal, an ordeal yet more terrible than any which had gone before, certain that the youths could not withstand this crucial test. Hold on. The seventh ordeal took place in the House of Bats. Here, in a dark subterranean labyrinth, lurked many strange and odious creatures of destruction. Huge bats fluttered dismally through the corridors and hung with folding wings from the carvings on the walls and ceilings. Here also dwelt Kamazots, the god of bats, a hideous monster with the body of a man and the wings and head of a bat. Kamazots carried a great sword, and soaring through the gloom, decapitated with a single sweep of his blade any unwary wanderers seeking to find their way through the terror-filled chambers. Xbalanque passed successfully through this horrifying test, but Hunapu, caught off his guard, was beheaded by Kamazots. Later, Hunapu was restored to life by magic, and the two brothers, having thus foiled every attempt against their lives by the Xbalbans, in order to better avenge the murder of Hunapu and Hunapu, permitted themselves to be burned upon a funeral pyre. These powdered bones were then cast into the river and immediately became two great man-fishes. Later, taking upon themselves the forms of aged wanderers, they danced for the Xbalbans and wrought strange miracles. Thus one would cut the other to pieces and with a single word resurrect him, or they would burn houses by magic and then instantly rebuild them. The fame of the two dancers, who were in reality Hunapu and Xbalanque, finally came to the notice of the 12 princes of Xbalba, who thereupon desired these two miracle workers to perform their strange feats before them. After Hunapu and Xbalanque had slain the dog of the princes and restored it to life, had burned the royal palace and instantly rebuilt it, and given other demonstrations of their magical powers, the monarch of the Xbalbans asked the magicians to destroy him and restore him also to life. That sounds dumb. So Hunapu and Xbalanque slew the prince of Xbalba, but did not return them to life, thereby avenging the murder of Hunapu and Hunapu. These heroes later ascended to heaven, where they became the celestial lights. Keys to the mysteries of Xbalba. Do not these initiations, rites, la plong, vividly recall to mind what Enoch said he saw in his visions? That blazing house of crystal burning hot and icy cold, that place where were the bow of fire, the quiver of arrows, the sword of fire, the other where he had to cross the babbling stream, and the river of fire, and those extremities of the earth full of all kinds of huge beasts and birds, or the habitation where appeared one of great glory sitting upon the orb of the sun. And lastly, does not the determined tree in the midst of the earth that he was told was the tree of knowledge find its simile in the calabash tree in the middle of the road, where those of EX Balba placed the head of Hunapu after sacrificing him for having failed to support the first trial of the initiation? These were the awful ordeals that the candidates for initiation into the sacred mysteries had to pass through in EX Balba. Do they not seem an exact counterpart of what happened in a milder form at the initiation into the Eleusinian mysteries, and also the greater mysteries of Egypt, from which these were copied? Does not the recital of what the candidates to the mysteries of EX Balba were required to know before being admitted recall to mind the wonderful similar feats said to be performed by the Mahatamas, the brothers in India, and of several of the passages of the book of Daniel, who had been initiated to the mysteries of the Chaldeans or Magi, which, according to Eubulus, were divided into three classes of genera, the highest being the most learned. See Sacred Mysteries among the Mayas and the Quiches. In his introductory notes to the Popol Vuh, Dr. Guthrie presents a number of important parallelisms between this sacred book of the Quiches and the sacred writings of other great civilizations. In the test through which Hunapu and Xbalanque are forced to pass, he finds the following analogy with the signs of the zodiac as employed in the mysteries of the Egyptians, Chaldeans, and Greeks. Aries, crossing the river of mud. Taurus, crossing the river of blood. Gemini, detecting the two dummy kings. Cancer, the house of darkness. Leo, the house of spears. Virgo, the house of cold, the usual trip to hell. Libra, the house of tigers, feline poise. Scorpio, the house of fire. Sagittarius, the house of bats, where the god Kamazots decapitates one of the heroes. Capricorn, the burning on the scaffold, the dual phoenix. Aquarius, their ashes being scattered in the river. Pisces, their ashes turning into man-fishes and later back into human form. It would seem more appropriate to assign the river of blood to Aries and that of mud to Taurus, and it is not at all improbable, that in the ancient form of the legend, And it is not at all improbable that in the ancient form of the legend, the order of the rivers was reversed. Dr. Guthrie most astonishing conclusion is his effort to identify EX Balba with the ancient continent of Atlantis. He sees in the 12 princes of EX Balba the rulers of the Antillean Empire, and in the destruction of these princes by the magic of Hunapu and Xbalanque an allegorical depiction of the tragic end of Atlantis. To the initiated, however, it is evident that Atlantis is simply a symbolic figure in which is set forth the mystery of origins. Concerned primarily with the problems of mystical anatomy, Mr. Price relates the various symbols described in the Popol Vuh to the occult centers of consciousness in the human body. Accordingly, he sees in the elastic ball the pineal gland, and in Hunapu and Xbalanque the dual electric current directed along the spinal column. Unfortunately, Mr. Pierce did not translate that portion of the Popol Vuh dealing directly with the initiatory ceremonial. EX Balba he considers to be the shadowy or etheric sphere, which, according to the mystery teachings, was located within the body of the planet itself. The fourth book of the Popol Vuh concludes with an account of the erection of a majestic temple, all white, where was preserved a secret black divining stone, cubical in shape. Gukukmats, or Quetzalcoatl, partakes of many of the attributes of King Solomon. The account of the temple building in the Popol Vuh is a reminder of the story of Solomon's temple and undoubtedly has a similar significance. Brazer de Boerberg was first attracted to the study of religious parallelisms in the Popol Vuh by the fact that the temple, together with the black stone which it contained, was named the Kaaba, a name astonishingly similar to that of the temple or Kaaba, which contains the sacred black stone of Islam. The exploits of Hunapu and Xbalanque take place before the actual creation of the human race and therefore are not to be considered essentially as spiritual mysteries. Ex Balba doubtless signifies the inferior universe of Chaldean and Pythagorean philosophy. The princes of Ex Balba are the 12 governors of the lower universe, and the two dummies or mannequins in their midst may be interpreted as the two false signs of the ancient zodiac inserted in the heavens to make the astronomical mysteries incomprehensible to the profane. The descent of Hunapu and Xbalanque into the subterranean kingdom of Ex Balba by crossing over the rivers on bridges made from their blowguns has a subtle analogy to the descent of the spiritual nature of man into the physical body through certain superphysical channels that may be likened to the blowguns or tubes. The Sabarakan is also an appropriate emblem of the spinal cord and the power resident within its tiny central opening. The two youths are invited to play the game of life with the gods of death, and only with the aid of supernatural power imparted to them by the sages can they triumph over these gloomy lords. The tests represent the soul wandering through the sub-zodiacal realms of the created universe. Their final victory over the lords of death represents the ascension of the spiritual and illumined consciousness from the lower nature which has been wholly consumed by the fire of spiritual purification. That the Quiches possessed the keys to the mystery of regeneration is evident from the analysis of the symbols appearing upon the images of their priests and gods. In Volume 2 of the Annals del Museo Nacional de Mexico is reproduced the head of an image generally considered to represent Quetzalcoatl. The sculpturing is distinctly oriental in character, and on the crown of the head appear both the thousand-petaled sunburst of spiritual illumination and the serpent of the liberated spinal fire. The Hindu chakra is unmistakable, and it frequently appears in the religious art of the three Americas. One of the carved monoliths of Central America is adorned with the heads of two elephants with their drivers. No such animals have existed in the Western Hemisphere since prehistoric times, and it is evident that the carvings are the result of contact with the distant continent of Asia. Among the mysteries of Central American Indians is a remarkable doctrine concerning the consecrated mantles, or, as they were called in Europe, magic capes, because their glory was fatal to mortal vision. The gods, when appearing to the initiated priest, robed themselves in these mantles. Allegory and fable, likewise, are the mantles with which the secret doctrine is ever enveloped. Such a magic cape of concealment is the Popol Vuh, and deep within its folds sits the god of Quiche philosophy. The massive pyramids, temples, and monoliths of Central America may be likened also to the feet of gods whose upper parts are enshrouded in magic mantles of invisibility.